How's it going, Heather? It's great to finally get you on the podcast. It's been an interesting couple months for me for sure. Things are just getting ramped up in my life and lots of changes with two little kids, but I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk with me today.
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much for having me here. I am excited to share all things cybersecurity future related.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because I always try to coach people to like look to the future and then that's what you should be focusing on now, right? And I think of my own career, and when I was getting into IT, security was like kind of in its infancy of blowing up, right? Where organizations started to realize, okay, we need to look at this thing, we need to pay attention to it and give it more money and whatnot. And so I knew IT overall wasn't for me, but I knew security was. And so I started to work towards getting into security. And then once I got in, I immediately started looking at cloud security. And cloud security was like AWS had like, I think, 10 or 12 services at the time, nothing compared to the 200 plus that it has now. And so I started to look towards getting specialized in cloud security. And now I'm actually getting a PhD in something that is probably going to be more relevant in 5 years. So I bring all that up because it's extremely important, to look towards the future and then start mapping your own career for that.
And I think what you're talking about, like how you decided to focus on cloud security. I mean, when I started in tech, cloud security didn't exist. We had to go to data centers and do all the coding. And I had a friend who was a consultant, and he's like, yep, setting up some servers in the rack space. I don't know, I used to look on Flickr and find all of those funny images of how people would do their cabling. Sometimes that cabling was like crazy, and sometimes it was really beautiful. I mean, behind all of the clouds, there is still a rack somewhere, a server somewhere, just who knows where it is. So, yeah, yeah. Can I ask what you're focusing on for your PhD? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I'm focusing on deploying the zero trust framework on the communication satellites to prepare it for post quantum encryption. Because right now
Love
there's no
it.
real, yeah, there's no real good way to maintain security on satellites once they're launched. It's kind of like you get what you get when they're on the ground, and that's it.
Hmm.
Because you only have like a 10 to 15-minute window to actually patch them as they orbit around the Earth. And you can, switch ground stations, but, switching ground stations mid upload of a security patch is like pretty difficult to do it right without, something breaking. So it's just easier to not patch it at that point.
It's really smart to start thinking about like the post quantum world and how we're going to secure those things. Cause I think at least one of the things that I've been kind of seeing is this fear that a lot of the threat actors trying to have like these data grabs right now that maybe they can't crack into them and get that, or even like with blockchain or something like that, just having it and, keeping it on some server somewhere because space is so cheap, and then just waiting until the current encryption is cracked through quantum computing. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting. So I'll put on my futurist hat here for a minute. What I would look for is what organizations are already thinking about implementing the zero trust framework like you're talking about. Which ones are already looking at quantum resistance, algorithms, or quantum resistance, like, the word,
Yeah.
whatever, like the NIST requirements, the NIST guidelines that they have it. Like Apple and Signal are two companies. And those are the companies that are using this post quantum resistance security. They're the ones that are going to be less targeted in the future. And from a user perspective or like a vendor perspective, you're going to want to trust those organizations more versus organizations that are just kind of like focusing on other things. And it doesn't matter who's going to crack quantum first, whether it's going to be China, might be China, or the United States, or United States in combination with EU, like it's just coming down. And it's a very real concern that unfortunately, like most of the focus is on like all the big fires and the things that are like top of, all the current drama that's like the fire that we have to deal with. dealing with quantum and understanding it for both security perspectives and other perspectives is a must focus that is not urgent yet. And so it's actually a really great example of like why you want to think about the future. You want to wait until quantum is a huge fire for you, or you want to have a little bit of a plan so that you're not taken by surprise when there is a pretty radical quantum breakthrough, you know? There will be news stories saying that quantum computing's been reached, and then of course all the hackers and threat actors and even the nation state threat actors are going to start using it for all kinds of stuff. It'll be like a whole new paradigm shift.
Yeah, it's you know, I a part of my research, I'm talking with a lot of experts in the field, of course, and all of them pretty much agree on the same thing is that companies are kind of downplaying it right now and they're waiting until the last minute when their urgency should actually be right now because of the amount of work that is actually going to be required to prepare their organizations for the newer algorithms and whatnot, right? And so a lot of places are going to be in a situation where 7 years when it's actually real present day, they didn't prepare at all. And now they're in a mad dash to, get it all done. Right. Which it's interesting because, the other side of it is, oh, we've been told, for the last 20 years that quantum is, 5 years away or whatever it might be. Right. But it's a little bit different when you start throwing quantum on the satellites and then you're using those satellites to connect to ground stations as it orbits via quantum, like China
Mhm.
did, or
Mhm.
at least that they claim that they did.
Mhm.
It's a little bit different when that becomes a reality because it's like this is being used. Like this is
Mhm.
real. This is no
Mhm.
longer theory, and
Mhm.
one expert was actually telling me, a lot of people are looking at the wrong thing to determine if quantum is mainstream yet or ready to be used. And I don't want to like give away everything from my research, right? But he pointed out like one key thing and he's like everything else just doesn't matter. If we get this one factor working, everything else just corrects itself.
Mhm.
And he's like, and that's what I'm focused on, right? And he literally
Mhm.
told me, he's like, yeah, it could happen tomorrow. I say 5 years because I think it'll actually be three, but I give myself more time,
Mhm.
to actually like
Mhm.
make it happen. But it's
Mhm.
it's interesting because it's a completely new field or new domain within security that like, even when I'm reading these research papers on how quantum cryptography works, I have to read it like 10 times and then go talk to the person that wrote it. And the person that wrote it like still, isn't quite able to explain it to me as like, a high schooler, right? Or a grade
Right.
schooler. And so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, this thing is like so complex, that it's going into like truly uncharted territory.
I think what we've ended up landing talking about on, people are always like, what does a futurist do? How do you know what the future is? Yeah, everyone wants a prediction of what the future is. We've just been talking about a future right now, one that is going to be really, really important. And unlike AI or the metaverse or pick whatever like most recent hyped technology, this is really serious and is going to have a really serious impact. And it's interesting that it's not being taken as serious as say the metaverse or AI.